This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. To the newcomers, we'll get to y'all in a second. For our returning viewers, welcome back. Haven't seen y'all since at least yesterday. Here's what we got for y'all. There's a story that might have floated under your radar recently. It involves the curious case of Professor Charles Lieber, the chair of the chemistry department at Harvard University. On the surface, it's just a matter of tax fraud. Just before Christmas, Lieber was convicted of 6 charges relating to false statements, wire fraud, and hiding financial support from a Chinese university. But this case was about so much more than tax fraud. It's about espionage, academic freedom, and the escalating research wars between China and the US. The Lieber case was the first guilty verdict as a result of a Department of Justice program known as the China Initiative. In 2018, the DOJ launched the program to identify secret theft cases and enforcement over non-traditional collectors of information like researchers in labs and universities. We'll get to those non-traditional collectors in a second. The program was inspired in part by a rising number of cases alleging economic espionage in the tech and science industries in the US. The cases range from indictments against whole companies like Huawei allegedly stealing tech from T-Mobile to individuals like an Apple engineer who was stopped by the FBI before flying back to China after allegedly stealing secret info.
You have to understand the China Initiative within the broader context of both the real threat of Chinese economic espionage, of hacking. When the China Initiative launched, there was all of this language about countering economic espionage.
But even if the threat of espionage is real, critics of the China Initiative say it strayed pretty far from that original mission, and with mixed results. Eileen Guo is a senior reporter for MIT's Technology Review, and she's been covering the China Initiative for a while, compiling data on the cases we know about.
But when you actually look at the data, what we found is that economic espionage was not really the focus of the initiative, and that as time went on, it became less of a focus. So of the 77 cases, 25% include alleged violations of the Economic Espionage Act, and a growing number, actually, 30%, had to do with what we are calling research integrity.
And violating research integrity here means cases of academic researchers or students not disclosing their affiliations or funding from Chinese entities. Now, that sounds pretty nefarious, but in many cases, the researchers and students claim they didn't even know they were violating any rules. Many of these cases hinge on funding disclosure rules at universities, which can already be vague and contradictory. Like last year, the first China Initiative case to go to trial was for Professor Anming Hu at the University of Tennessee. He actually followed the university guidelines given to him for disclosures, but was charged with violating federal law.
When you start out investigating people because of their so-called nexus to China, if you start out there, as opposed to starting out with the evidence, then you're going to find some reason to say that someone is guilty of some crime. And his trial over the summer resulted in, at first, a mistrial, and then a complete dismissal of all charges.
This analysis by MIT's Tech Review also showed these integrity cases have been pretty unsuccessful. Only 6 defendants have pled guilty, and Lieber is the first conviction. And that's about as much as the number of cases where charges were dropped by the government or declared a mistrial. The rest are still pending. That MIT analysis found another troubling but unsurprising statistic. 88% of all people charged under the initiative were of Chinese heritage. The DOJ has insisted they're investigating suspicious conduct and not based on race. But critics say there are a few problems with that argument, like considering how broad the initiative's reach is. And this accusation of racial profiling even came up during Charles Lieber's trial.
One of the reasons that he was being investigated was because the Department of Defense investigators found it really suspicious how many Chinese students he had in his laboratory. Now that's, you can perhaps argue that you're not racially profiling Charles Lieber, but that is a case of racially profiling the students that work for him. It's increasingly clear as this program has been going on that Chinese heritage scientists are seen as perpetual foreigners, as people whose loyalty is in question.
More cases under the initiative are scheduled to go to court in 2022, but scrutiny against the program is building momentum. Former DA Andrew Lelling, one of the creators of the initiative, admitted the initiative has drifted and, in some significant ways, lost its focus. DOJ should revamp and shut down parts of the program. In all, more than 1,600 scholars and administrators from more than 200 universities have petitioned Attorney General Merrick Garland to end the China initiative. In October, the Attorney General told Congress that there will be a review of the program, but things are not slowing down.
We continue to open cases involving the People's Republic of China daily, as the director said. We will not in any way let up our concerns.
In the meantime, that's troubling news for defendants like Professor Franklin Tao, who taught chemical engineering at the University of Kansas. He was the first indictment of the China initiative back in August of 2019. He failed to disclose a potential contract teaching job in China and is now facing up to 20 years in prison. These cases drag on and can be destructive even before reaching trial. His wife recently told reporters she's now working 3 jobs to pay for the legal fees. So as we wait to see what's next for the China initiative, these cases are continuing to bring havoc to the defendants' lives and careers, and that's taking its toll on the wider research communities.
One of the biggest effects of the China initiative is how it has chilled research collaboration. What that has done is discouraged a lot of people from hiring Chinese students, from continuing to collaborate with Chinese peers. And in some of the cases of the university professors that have themselves been investigated, it's meant that they've gone back to China, which is absolutely the opposite of what the United States really wants.
The escalating fight over research and tech between China and the US is just one of the many reasons tensions have been rising between the two countries. Another point of conflict has been China's added oversight in Hong Kong. Richard Kimber, our correspondent there in Hong Kong, brings us the latest and why the international community has been watching closely.
It's the end of an era for veteran Hong Kong journalist Chris Young. This week he shut down his independent media platform Citizen News due to fears his staff might face prosecution under the city's controversial national security law.
The indications are clear that overall media is facing an increasingly tough environment, and for those who are being seen as critical or troublemakers, they are more vulnerable.
It's the third local news outlet to shut in the past week, following this police raid at pro-democracy media company Stand News. 7 senior staffers were arrested. They're accused of publishing seditious content that promotes anti-government sentiment. The arrests are facing international condemnation. The White House says they undermine Hong Kong's credibility and its status as an international finance hub. The Hong Kong government says those accusations are baseless and that media freedoms are protected by the city's constitution.
These actions have nothing to do with so-called suppression of press freedom or suppression of democracy, as some will put it. So I would say that nobody should associate law enforcement actions by the police department with the freedom of the press.
Recent political changes in Hong Kong are also causing international concern over freedom of expression. In the city's legislative election last month, only candidates deemed to be patriots by the government were allowed to stand. Pro-Beijing lawmakers say that's a big improvement.
In the past, we've seen that we have suffered a lot from filibustering, and the opposition, they stirred up a lot of conflict, and that actually hurt the city.
Political experts say the electoral reforms are a sign of things to come.
The Communist Party is very powerful and it is very strong. And we are a local government of China, and so they have the authority to call the shots, and that's exactly what they're doing.
The Hong Kong government says the city's integration with the Chinese mainland will bring stability and prosperity. For some in the local media and international finance community, it's also bringing a lot of uncertainty. Richard Kimber for Newsy, Hong Kong.